welcome back to the Eurasian Century. I'm Misha Voin, and I've been on hiatus for a while, but I'm back with a kind of open schedule because I've kind of gone into semi retirement again, and everything's paid for, and I don't have to worry about doing anything except what I like to do, which is produce music and a few other hobbies, including this. So a lot of stuff has happened since the last time we visited. Um, I'm gonna start. I'm not gonna start off with the Oreshnik thing. That was what you saw in the intro, and it was. We're gonna get to that a little bit later because it was a historical event, in my humble opinion. But what we got really now, I'm going to start off with, is in Syria. And this all started when Israel and Lebanon signed I guess you'd call it a ceasefire or a truce anyway, temporary truce, which has been filled with lots of holes on both sides. I've heard the Israelis have violated it well over 100 times. I'm sure that Hezbollah has. Hezbollah agreed to it as well, but it was actually with Lebanon that it was signed. And so the Israelis decided that they would pivot east and start focusing on Iran. And so the next thing we have is what you might call a little powwow. Uh, the Astana process is a group which is Syria, Turkey, Russia, and Iran, which are kind of a group charged with trying to straighten out the whole Syria mess, get it on a track to have elections, and settle the problems with Kurds and Turkey and everything else that was going on there. And so um, Bashar al Assad decided he was going to just give up power. Now, I heard uh, through my sources that he and his family had been studying Russian since 2017 because he knew the writing was on the wall. And this was, for the most part, was his decision. I think the Russians, they at least made a show uh, of striking at HTS when they invaded shortly thereafter. However, it became clear to everyone that Assad wasn't going to do anything. He was going to tell everybody to stand down. I think the Russians knew about this, and maybe the Iranians, but definitely the Russians knew about this from the Astana process and from probably direct talks with them. They've got military bases in Syria, and they probably will. Well, they may continue to have them. Um, the HTS has made no sounds about trying to um, move the Russians out. In fact, they're in negotiations to keep the bases, in negotiations with Russia to keep the bases. And so we'll see what happens. The natural inclination of the Russians is probably to pull them out because Syria is probably not going to be a very pleasant place for a little while. So, in any case, Turkey had been hosting a number of militant organizations, HTS being among them. This is Hayatu, let's see, Hayatu Tahrir Sham. Um, we call it HTS because it's easier to say. Um, and It's basically the Organization for the Liberation of, and that's an interesting thing. Sham doesn't mean Syria. A Sham means the Levant. And so, even in their name, their focus is on liberating Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. Um, but um, we'll talk about that later. Um, so, what I think has happened here, and it's best to start out with that, what I think has happened, because everything is intelligible if you look at it from this perspective. Erdogan knew that Assad and the Russians were not going to stand in Syria and fight. The main purpose of the Israelis and the Americans in green lighting and supporting and financing and whatnot the entire project of going into Syria was that they would open up another front in the northwest of Syria, taking Aleppo, but they didn't think it was going to go much further than that, if at all. And so everybody was surprised when the Syrian forces stood down and they just kept going south. Everybody except for Putin and Erdogan, because Erdogan screwed over the West. He took all the money, all the training, everything that was, funneled through him to these organizations with the idea that they would draw Russia into a second front in the northwest of Syria. And that's as far as it would go because that was the main purpose of it. And yet he turned it around and used it to fund them conquering Syria, the entire country. And he knew that was how it was going to go. And the United States and Israel did not know how it was going to go. And the way you know that is they've been very ham-handed in making up things to rationalize what has happened. Their spokesmen for the Pentagon, for the White House, have stumbled all over themselves trying to put lipstick on a pig, which is HTS is really ISIS. And they're head choppers, or they have been in the past in any case. And so they did rushed on, put an interview on CNN with Jelani, the head of them, and they've done the CIA, I'm sure, has done various media ops, Mockingbird type stuff, to make it seem like this was the plan all along, but it was not the plan all along. They would not have financed the overthrow of the Assad government by HTS. They sent HTS in to take Aleppo and other groups that were with it. How do I know this? Well, everybody was surprised when it went beyond Aleppo and Homs. They took Aleppo, and when they didn't get any resistance except for the Russians bombing in and striking in Idlib, where they'd been their holdout, they went on to Hama, which is further south, and that really surprised everyone. And people were saying already at that time, if they keep pushing and they get to Homs, then they'll take the whole country. And they went down to Homs, and everybody was shocked. Everybody was shocked when it happened. You have to look at these things actually in real time when they happen to understand that people are lying about what their actual intentions were. Because Homs is the place which is on the road down to Damascus, which was the hub through which the reinforcements, the military assistance, and other aid was going from Iran to Hezbollah. And so immediately when this all happened, Netanyahu and our government got out in front and said, "Oh, we did this. This was our intention, was to cut off Iran from Hezbollah." Well, they didn't think they were going to get near Homs. What they intended to do was draw Russia in to this thing. Now, um, and Erdogan double crossed them. The Russians have made it clear that they're not going to have another Afghanistan. And so that's kind of where we are with that, except for the other thing is that the Israelis, who were mad as hornets, I'm sure, at having been betrayed by having ISIS basically take over Syria and be right on their border, they invaded southern Lebanon and went almost to Damascus. And they're making it essentially a buffer zone between Israel proper and ISIS. And they're saying they're doing this because they've made like over 400 strikes, taking out what was left of, well, there wasn't really a battle, the entire Syrian military force infrastructure, and they don't want it to fall into the hands of terrorists. Well, if you actually funded and supported a terrorist organization in order to overthrow the government of Syria, if you actually wanted to do that, you wouldn't be invading Lebanon and shooting at everything that has camouflage on it in Syria, because you would have worked all that out before. Um, but they didn't, and they didn't think this was going to happen. So that makes a lot more sense of the things that you see happening in the region now. Because the U.S. administration and a lot of the alternative media are saying this is a great coup for the CIA and for Mossad and for the United States and Israel. And that because the United States had been interested in overthrowing Assad for years and had attempted to do so, and that the Israelis had a not exactly friendly relationship with him either, that means that they wanted to put ISIS in Damascus. No, I don't buy that. I think everybody was really surprised that the Syrian army stood down. I didn't think they had any idea that they would get to Homs, and I think they are shocked that they have these people in Damascus now. So that's kind of what's happened with Syria up to the moment. Let me look and see if there's anything else that we need to look at. Yeah, the HTS is only maybe 30,000 strong, and they had other smaller groups. And yeah, I mean, if you think that the Israelis are overreacting by going into taking over southern Lebanon, well, if they had actually sponsored this HTS taking of Damascus, you would be right. But that's not what happened. These terrorist organizations, the hardcore head choppers, the CIA has been using them for years to do dirty work, minor stuff, like starting an insurgency in Aleppo. But Erdogan had other plans, and Putin had other plans. I'm sure Erdogan and Putin were in the Astana process, and they have warm and cold relations depending on the antics of Erdogan at any given time. But consider, if the Russians had taken the bait and did make it another Afghanistan, Erdogan would be a hero with NATO, the US, and Israel. But knowing that they were not going to take the bait, Erdogan had already applied to join BRICS. Syria had already applied to join BRICS. What they told Erdogan was, we'll admit you as a partner, which is less than a full member. And this is how he's making his bones. So, uh, that's my theory of what's going on. I mean, free to weave your own theories of it. But it explains pretty much everything that's happening right now. And nothing else really does that I've seen, because they can't get past this contradiction of um, ISIS in Damascus, HTS in Damascus, and Israel wanting somehow ISIS to be in Damascus. Now, that, I mean, it's complicated more because you have these people, HTS, they're on film talking about Jerusalem is next and the Al Aqsa Mosque. And like I said at the beginning of this, their name includes Asham, the Organization for the Liberation of Asham, which is the Levant. Um, they have not attacked Israel so far for two reasons. One, they're only about 30,000 strong, if that. Two, Israel invaded and took over southern Lebanon immediately in an act of calculated aggression to make them think twice about going after Israel in the near term. So, what I think is going to happen is Erdogan is going to go after the Kurds in the northeast who are protected by the American army, military forces. I think we have 28 bases in northeastern Syria. So that's going to be ugly, probably. The fighting's already started. It's anybody's guess as to what extent and how it's going to be reported in the Western media. But that little conflict is already going on. So you've got, I mean, and Aragon sees the Kurds as mortal enemies, existential enemies, even. And so he's going to go after them no matter what. That's why he did this, for one reason, the main reason, or one main reason. The other main reason is he wants to be an Ottoman Empire and wants to extend Turkish control, which he has done. And he will, I'm sure, fortify everything in Syria as time goes by. And he's already the weapons and equipment have poured across the border, and they're already going in there. So I mean, that's one of the things that's scaring the living daylights out of Israel. Um, so in the media in the West, they're all playing it up as a loss for Iran and even Russia, and playing it up as a win for the U.S. and Israel. And you can do that if you ignore, the things that I've been saying, that it was only supposed to be a limited operation in the north. So, um, what you have going on now is the complete alienation of the entire Muslim world in that area, even greater than they were because of Israel's um, ethnic cleansing in Gaza in the West Bank. Because Israel has been really open. The Some of them, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, have been very open. Ministers, Netanyahu's ministers, have been open about Greater Israel, the land that was given to them, they believe, forever in the Old Testament. And that includes Syria and Lebanon, even parts of Saudi Arabia, at least Syria as far as Damascus. And so if the Israeli army invades up to the outskirts of Damascus, that's like taking a stick and hitting a hornet's nest as far as Muslim Arabs are concerned, and Persian Muslims. Um, so Iran's not happy. Um, Turkey's fairly happy. But the reason Iran's not happy, there may be a temporary interruption in munitions from Iran to Hezbollah. But all the rhetoric now is everybody's really in the West, and Israel is hyper angry at Iran right now. And this will probably motivate Iran to test a nuclear weapon at some point in the very near future, I would say. Um, and so the whole thing's blown up in everybody's face, and um, that's where we are with it. Moving right along. Let's see here. Oreshnik. That video that you saw at the beginning of this program was a intermediate range ballistic missile called the Oreshnik, which means hazel or hazelnut or hazel tree. And the reference is to the way that the missiles look when they're coming down. They're staggered, and they come down like hazelnuts on a vine. Reminds you. Um, I got that from what's it called? Millennium Seven. Who's I'm not sure if he's Russian. You can't find much about him, but he has a Slavic accent, and so I think he knows something about these things. Um, he's a military historian as well. So that footage was actually from the British military, and what they did is they put a filter that took the glare, um, some of the glare, off of the missiles coming in. So what Oreshnik does, it moves someplace between Mach 10 and Mach 12. Uh, that is 10 or 12 times the speed of sound, and it has a lower arc than like an intercontinental ballistic missile. And the thing that the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians seem to have perfected is hypersonic speed within the atmosphere, um, achieving stable hypersonic cruising speed in the atmosphere, I guess is a better way to say it. And so it took less than 7.5 minutes probably from the thing to be launched in order and for it to arrive in Dnipropetrovsk, which the Ukrainians call Dnipro, and it was a factory, military industrial complex called the Yuzhmash, and it the area of it of the compound is something like 1.5 kilometers by a kilometer, so it's a bit over a square kilometer. And Oreshnik reduced it to dust, pulverized everything. And the way it did it was Oreshnik, the one missile that gets launched, actually has 36 warheads, 6 groups of 6. They're called multiple independent reentry vehicles, MIRVs. And they split up, and they strike. They are focused on one particular area of the plant, but all 6 of them cover the entire area of the plant. And when they hit, they're going someplace around Mach 10 or Mach 11. And so all that light is the plasma field that's around them, and um, when they hit, there's no explosive payload, at least in these. Now they're actually You can put nuclear weapons in them, or you can put conventional weapons in them. But nobody in the West can shoot them down. Can't even really get a lock on them because they're so fast. And so essentially, the Russians can throw a dart at a map and take out whatever it is that's there. Nobody can do anything about it except start a nuclear war because these things aren't nuclear weapons, but the effect they have is about the same as a small yield tactical nuclear weapon. Um, it pulverized everything in a 1 square kilometer area down to 4 stories deep and took out everything. It's a bunker buster as well as. Now it doesn't have the mushroom cloud. It doesn't have the radiation, but it's the game changer because they can do whatever they want to do with this, and it gives them what's called clear escalatory dominance. Um, this they can strike anything in Ukraine. They could strike anything they wanted to in Europe. They could hit, we know, the west coast of the United States. And they have the technology to do all this stuff and put it on an ICBM as well. So they could hit anything, anywhere, if they want to. And nobody can do anything about it, except start a nuclear war. Now, it doesn't seem like it upsets the balance of power that much because of MAD. We already have mutually assured destruction. Nobody wants to launch a nuke because that crosses a threshold where everybody thinks it's going to be very difficult to pull things back. And that could escalate because of, if a nuclear weapon hits anything around the population center, you're probably talking at a minimum about hundreds of thousands of people being killed, maybe millions, by the strike. And at that point, the population of just about any place wants to go full bore, and the political pressure in order to retaliate with nuclear weapons is overwhelming. That's the theory behind mutually assured destruction. So that already, we've already had experience with that. But this is conventional, and it leaves the other side holding the bag. They have a dilemma of, are they going to be the bad guys and launch a nuclear strike in response to having, for example, a U.S. military installation in Poland reduced to dust? Because the Russian government has said that they would inform several hours before if they were going to strike some U.S. Military site that surrounds civilians so that civilians could evacuate. Because it doesn't matter, they can inform, since the West can't do anything about it. There's no downside to giving the warning. So this is going to be interesting, how it plays out in the long term. But I'm not sure, it's as big as the Manhattan Project or that it's a clear checkmate. If everybody was going full bore, it probably would be a clear checkmate. But everybody's being more restrained about it at this point, so it's hard to say. But that's what we got today, and we'll probably explore these two issues: the Syrian conflict and the new Russian hypersonic weapons in later programs. I'm doing these as a kind of fireside chat type format because I found the last format after a while was kind of dry because you got a lot of information, a heck of a lot of information, but there wasn't much personality. It was me reading or relying a lot on a script, and so there's a information factor, and you have to balance out the entertainment factor as well. So we'll see if this works a little bit better. But anyway, hit like and subscribe if this video turns you on, float your boat, fluff your tail, and we'll see you next time.